So welcome, we are back, the Three Amigos, and we're here to talk our very first video about body language and the massive importance of it, and tied in very closely with that, of course, is the importance of first impressions. You know, those opening few seconds really when we meet someone or see them for the first time, whether it's a meeting situation or indeed a formal presentation. What is it we think the minute that that person gets up there or indeed sits at the table before they even open their mouths, that crucial first impression? And we are in the midst of experts, I'm glad to say, when it comes to first impressions and body language, and they've popped out. No. Boo is certainly one of those. Boo, first impressions, why are they so important?
I don't know. I think it's so important, seriously, to make a good first impression, because in my opinion it does most of your job for you. People will make their mind up about you very, very early on after meeting you. There's even evidence that suggests that even if people know you but they see you in a different circumstance, they'll still make a decision about how you've behaved, how you've come across very, very quickly. So I think it's crucial, and the great thing is it's so easy to make a good first impression, but normally what happens with us is when we're under pressure, when we're a little anxious, when we feel like a situation is intimidating us, we perhaps don't come across as well as we could. We tend to take the batteries out, we perhaps don't offer our body language at its most confident.
Boo, thanks for that. Enlightening as ever. John, your thoughts on this?
Well, I agree with a lot of what Boo said. I think first impressions are so crucial, and I see this every day. For me, the first impression infects pretty much everything that happens after that. This you can have this in a group course, and I always find this fascinating. I know within a minute of starting a course whether it's going to be good or not, just from the impression that people have made on me. So for example, if you've got someone who comes in, and we had this just recently, Mike and I were in a course working out in Hong Kong, and this guy walked in and he had a face like thunder, and you could, within 10 seconds, I felt myself getting tense, because I thought, this guy does not want to be here. It's very, very clear. He couldn't look you in the eye, didn't want to shake hands, sat down, got his phone out, huffing and puffing.
To the front as well, isn't he?
Right, and it was, and what starts happening? It infects the room. It starts to bleed into everything. And what I found myself doing was, I'm speaking to 8 people, but actually I'm only speaking to one person. I'm trying to persuade that one person, and I've got it in my head the whole day. And what was really interesting, and this is something I've learned over the years to do, rather than sort of confront it there and then, in the first break I went up to him and I said, "Are you right? Because it seems to me like you're not really wanting to be here or enjoying yourself." And you know what he said? He said, "I'm really sorry, mate. I've just got a terrible hangover." And so he was ill. The guy was actually ill. I said, "Oh, look, you can go if you want." He said, No, I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying listening to, but just, if you see me like that, it's just because I'm not very well." But, that first impression had infected not just me, but the whole room had felt it. And I remember when we were actors, you can tell by the first joke if it's going to be a good show, because you get one person who starts laughing, everyone starts laughing, and so,
John, don't talk about acting, because Mike gets a bit uncomfortable about the whole thing.
Oh yeah. Sorry,
and can you please not use the word "were"?
Oh right, yeah. No, you're still present tense, isn't it?
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
yeah, I mean, as the story you told, when Matt Damon first met you, he thought you were an arse. So for me, that's why first impressions are important, because they last. They stick with you for such a long time.
Actually, when I spoke to Matt, he said he thought you were still an arse.
I think this thing you're referring to, John, and it was the word I would use for that experience in Hong Kong. It was a painful 90 minutes. It really was. They call it emotional contagion. Is how quickly we can infect the mood and feelings of those around us. And not only did we feel we were trying to win over one person, but what also became painfully clear was that everyone in the room was struggling to pay full attention to us because of just how how strong this guy's attitude seemed to be. And of course, the crazy thing is, that's the impression he gave, and it wasn't a fair representation of the sort of guy he was.
Yeah.
When we got chatting to him, he was, he said it was I think it was a work, it was something, but it turned into a really late night, and he was just feeling so dog rough, and that's what was. A fascinating thing I read recently, based on what we read from people, is it was a university in America, and they had a group and they split them down the middle. And for one group, all they did was they showed them photographs of a handful of professors. And then they gave that group, and they only saw it for a few seconds, they gave them a questionnaire on their performance based on those photographs. The other half of the group actually had a whole semester actually receiving classes from these same professors. And the remarkable results were that actually people who'd only seen a photograph for a few seconds, based on what the impression they got of that person, and the people who'd actually been face to face with these same professors, the results of the questionnaires were remarkably similar. So in other words, people gleaned so much that was right about that person just based on their first,
the way they looked,
on the way they looked.
Well, I'm sure anyone watching this will have the experience of meeting somebody for the first time and thinking, don't really like that person, and then weeks or months later think, oh, actually got to know them a bit and it's okay. And it's so often, like you said, those first few seconds have formed that impression of, and it takes an age for that first impression.
Think about
to
interviews.
change.
Interviews. A decision will probably be made about how suitable you are for the role that you're interviewing for in less than 90 seconds. That's why first impressions are so important.
People often say to us, we're told, surely it's just about being yourself. Last week I was asked, what makes me an expert in this field? The same guy asked me, nowadays, are you not being encouraged to just sort of pull back a bit on the tips and techniques and just encourage people to be themselves? I said, well, yeah, the danger with that is, if we're all just going about being ourselves, a lot of the time my feeling is, be yourself, just not like that. Because, if it's how you happen to be feeling, poor eye contact or just not looking like you're interested, then of course that's disastrous for presentations, interviews. So of course be yourself, but we just need to dial up certain aspects of ourselves when it matters.
So let's talk about some areas of body language then. Perhaps we can all share one thing in body language that would help make a good first impression.
Yeah, how do you make a good first impression?
Can we just kill the dog?
I think the first thing we've got to think about is, how do I want to be perceived? Because for me, first impressions, the drum I always bang is, we reflect what we see. So how do you want to be perceived in this situation? I guess most of the time we want to be perceived as a nice person, a confident person, a person who looks like we know what we're talking about if it's business, or a friendly person if it's a meeting. So I think for me it starts the moment you walk through that door. And if you don't mind, I'll share another story with you. This was a tip I was given ages ago and I wish I'd known this tip long time ago. So it's a mate of ours, a guy called Lee. Now if you think Mike's a famous actor, you should meet our friend Lee. So Lee, who was George Gently, Inspector George Gently's sidekick. You'll know him. Look him up. And a couple of years ago I was saying to Lee, because Lee, as soon as we left drama school, he used to get job after job after job. I say, Lee, how did you do it? How did you make sure you always got the job when you had an audition? Because all actors hate auditions. They are the most terrifying thing. And Lee said that he was given a tip in his first week as a professional actor that has served him well ever since. So I asked him to share it. He said, well, normally when you go to an audition, you're not in control, right, as the actor. You're waiting out in the waiting room. You're called in eventually, normally an hour late. And when you walk in, you're replacing the actor that's just left. And the director and the producer, the guys who make the decisions, are sat on the sofa still talking about the previous person. You have to come in, stand on the X, say your name to camera, give them your profile, show them your hands, tell them who your agent is. The nerves are building up, and eventually the director and the producer will decide that they're ready to see your audition piece. Lee said, I never did any of that. He said, I'd walk straight through the door, and the minute I walked through that door, I'm the character. And I would walk up to the director and the producer, and I'd shake them by the hand, and I'd grab a chair, and I'd pull it up, and I'd start talking to them, a big smile on my face, and I'd say, look, so I've been thinking about the part, and completely different from every other actor. So it wasn't 100% success rate, but he knew all else fails, he's making an impression. So I guess what I'm saying, if you're asking me what's one thing, it's that entrance. It's that first smile, connection, engagement, handshake, all of that stuff. I think immediately it gets people reflecting something positive from you.
I think that's a really interesting point. I always work on the premise that people buy people, and they do. The first thing we buy is people. So my main tip for making good first impression is to be a person. So often when we're intimidated by a circumstance, we become a bit of a robot. We offer sort of 20% of the person that we are capable of being because we're rather intimidated by the circumstance. We become rather formal, we're quite serious, and it doesn't show someone that's likable. So put very simply, be liked. If you're liked, people are far more likely to listen to you, far more likely to employ you, far more likely to remember you.
Yeah, I think you've covered it, guys. To be honest, I think what's crucial is I think we get into habits, and I know this is something you often mention, Boo, is that we kind of take communication for granted, and I think a lot of the time it is just the moments before an important spoken communication, just those reminders, because the one of the buzzwords at the moment is authenticity, isn't it? Be yourself. But that's great again, but I come back to my point before. If I'm just being myself all the time, and I've had a bad night's sleep, one of my 3 adorable kids has been up coughing or wheezing, and I've had a terrible journey in, and I allow that to affect those opening few seconds of my meeting with someone or that presentation, then it's not going to serve anybody well. So for me, it is about doing all the things you guys have said and just taking those crucial moments to yourself, those trigger words, just what is it that can get me smiling here? What is it that can get me energized here? What is it that can just get me still be me, but as we like to say in our courses, just that slightly heightened version. So we're just switched on. We're not faking it. We're just that bit switched on, and that's I've come to think of it as I'm being authentic. It's me. I'm just that bit more switched on. And it is a conscious decision.
It is, isn't it? Yeah. And there are things that you can do to help, in advance. I think, getting yourself into that state before you. There's a brilliant YouTube TED Talk by Amy Cuddy on body language, which is all about just before an interview, getting yourself physically being the person that you want to be during that interview, so that when you walk through the door, you are already that person. Well worth watching. How are you going to dress? I mean, this is something I find fascinating. I know in myself. So I'm sat here now with an open neck shirt. Just look at the difference if I do my top button up, if I can.
If you can.
No. Right? Yeah. If I'm sat there like that, or like that, or like that. Well, I mean, the tiniest things can make a difference. How do I want to be? Do I want to be perceived as, is this interview about being smart and about being, or would they like to see someone a little bit more casual? Or so all these things to think about, but all of which I think make an important difference.
Absolutely.
So come on then, to finish, guys. If you could think of anybody that we can hold out there as a benchmark, somebody who, when you see them either on TV or or on stage or whatever, who you just think, wow, they tick all the right boxes. Mikey?
I'm gonna have to stick with what I have most recently been involved in writing a little bit about, and it is, I come back to the New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern. I just think she, for me, I hate the expression ticking boxes, but she she just has all those human qualities that I look for in a great speaker. You know, there's that sincerity. She hasn't had much, of course, to smile about in recent weeks, of course not. But there is that unmistakable sense of sincerity and conviction. And she connects. She connects to her listeners. She puts herself, you know, out there, and it's not just about her. There's a feeling of humility, and that she is there to serve. A million miles, I have to say, from what we're seeing on shores closer to home at the moment.
Yeah. Bigley?
Well, I think it falls into two categories, and I want to just give two examples of people I feel are very, very human, but also both exhibit what I think is one of the most powerful gifts of any top communicator. Both the people I'm about to tell you about are fantastic listeners. So on breakfast TV, I always like to try and wake up, I was about to say with, but I always like to wake up to Louise Minchin. Now, she's a lovely, lovely lady, is very, very natural, but always brings the best out of anyone she interviews, but also has this amazing empathy. So if it's quite a sad story, she's immediately, without patronising, she's just getting the best from them, even in a very trying situation. The other one that I always think is rather ridiculed and underrated is Graham Norton. I think there's a direct comparison with other TV hosts, he actually encourages and coerces the very best out of people rather than trying to score points off them. So I think at the moment the people that stand out for me as people that have made great first impressions, have great body language, but also are really, really effective communicators, perversely are the ones that really listen and empower their audience.
Yeah.
Over to you, Jen.
Well, from our answers, you're gonna glean, you know, who amongst us is highbrow or not. Mikey's gone for a powerful world leader. Boo's gone for TV hosts, and I'm with him as well because for me, and you'll laugh, but it's Ant and Dec. I mean, Ant and Dec? You can't beat Ant and Dec, I don't think, for their sense of, as soon as the TV's on and those boys stand up, you just smile. You're watching them and you're smiling. Why? Because they're smiling, they're having fun. They, unlike us, they bounce off each other. They're funny, you know. They have this camaraderie. They're sure, yeah. They got hair. Well, they've had it. And it's that. I just think it's that wonderful sense of fun. And my God, we need that at the moment, I think, in the world. And so it's not a highbrow selection. And I was just, as you guys were talking, I was trying to, because I actually was going to say Graham Norton as well, because he brings that same sort of sense of energy and fun, and you're captivated by these people, and that's why we want to watch them all the time. That's why they win the awards every year, of course. I think they're a wonderful example of what you were saying just now, Mikey, that is that the real Ant and Dec? Probably not. They dial it up, right? But I wouldn't imagine it's too far off them when they're on good form. And that's what you see. When you see those two, it's them, they're being themselves, they're fun, they're authentic, they're real, and we love them for it.
There we go. Lots of, us just chatting really as friends and colleagues that speak the speech about the massive importance of body language. You're bound to have your thoughts, your views, maybe you've had experiences where it's worked in your favour or you felt, again, how do we learn? We have an interview, we give a presentation, spend a few minutes reflecting on it. What could you have done better? What went well? Why do you think it was effective, impactful? And all of those things. So thanks for watching, and a lot more of this to come.
Subscribe.
Please.
Write in. Ask questions.
Ricky Gervais in the office.